Welcome everyone to this week's meeting of the Tacoma-Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. Hope everybody's ready for some good conversation, enjoying the first full day of fall. Let's kick off with Rosemary. Go ahead, Rosemary.
Good morning, everybody. I welcome everyone today to our open table where we take time every week to learn about efforts to respond to homelessness and
Oh, Rosemary, you froze up.
we call ourselves to listen to and uplift the voices and experiences of the Indigenous people of this land and beyond. Today, I've been thinking about the equinox, which happened yesterday, and its signal for the beginning of fall. The ending of the year gives a time to reflect on things like living and dying and the growth cycle of plants and projects and relationships and dreams, things that may decay and come back stronger with time to replant or reconsider, or things that may decay and signal a failure of courage, of generosity, or of attention. We meet every week here in this aware of our deep frustration at the inadequate response of all the systems we inhabit, represent, or challenge. Some of us and others unable to join us here live each day a precarious life on the streets, in cars, or in other temporary places. And the coming of autumn signals even greater challenges for survival and for finding safe, secure, and permanent housing. The equinox calls attention to the interaction of light and dark, as it's the day when, in general, we experience equal parts of both. 2 times a year, in spring and autumn, the sun is directly over the equator, and we are all literally centered in relation to the sun. So maybe we can tune into that centeredness, at least briefly, as we begin our work today, just a little bit off the equinox of yesterday. I think here about the power of breath and the reality of our interdependence. We breathe in air mixed from everywhere, made from centuries-old molecules, today's pathogens, and the oxygen we need to survive. I don't think about this life-sustaining process most of the time, but when I do, it calms me, like thinking of the cycles of light and dark, the seasons, and the cycles of birth and death. I'm encouraged by knowing that we are all in all of this together and will survive or not together. Even the greediest among us needs to breathe. So I ask that we take a few seconds to pay attention with gratitude to our breath as air continues to flow in and out, and I'll close with a brief autumn poem by Mary Oliver. So let's take about 10 seconds just to focus on the in and out of our breath. And here are lines written in the days of coming darkness. Every year, says Mary Oliver, we have been witness to it, how the world descends into a rich mash in order that it may resume. And therefore, who would cry out to the petals on the ground to stay, knowing as we must how the vivacity of what was is married to the vitality of what will be. I don't say it's easy, but what else will do if the love one claims to have for the world be true? So let us go on, though the sun be swinging east and the ponds be cold and black and the sweets of the year be doomed. Let us go on. So welcome everybody to this new day with breathing together in this space. And just a few notes for those of you who are new. We ask that you use the raise hand function in Zoom when you would like to say something, that you mute yourself when you're not speaking, and that you turn the video off if you're doing other activities so that we're not distracted. We also encourage you to use the chat for conversation, for asking questions, for giving answers, for sending resources. It is a really important resource for us that is saved and is available to people after the meeting is over. We also have a set of community norms, which Rob is posting in the chat. And those are basically our respect for one another. Our mission is that we work to end homelessness with respect. So we have different opinions about how to do this. And sometimes our conversations are quite dramatic conversations. So respect is one of our goals. And so you can read the rest of the norms there that we're encouraged to use as we talk with one another. So with that, I'd like to invite anybody who's new or returning from some time away to just let us know your name. And if you represent an organization, this is not a time for a longer introduction. And I do encourage any of you who represent a small organization that would like us to know about you to let us know that, because we every week feature some group that is doing good work and helping us to know one another. So anyone who's new here or returning, just raise your hand and either I or Rob will recognize you. Oliver.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Give me 1 second. I'm struggling with video. Hello, there we go.
All right, welcome.
Hello, my name's Oliver. I'm a new homeowner. My plan is to kind of open my home up to help homeless people if I can. That's kind of my stab at trying to help this problem. Yeah, that's all I got. Just kind of new. Just here for the
Oliver,
conversation.
that's wonderful. Thanks to you for coming. And there's lots of great people to talk to here. So appreciate your showing up.
Awesome. I'm happy to meet everyone.
Julie.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Julie Easley, and I'm the Director of Youth Programs at the Coffee Oasis in Tacoma. So I am happy to be here. It's been a while, so I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
Nice to see you back, Julie. And thanks for your work. I see a message from Dean. You're brand new here. Thank you very much for joining us and look forward to talking with you. If you're able to talk, that's fine. That it's in the chat's fine too. I don't see anyone else, Rob. If you don't, then I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rosemary, for your thoughtful opening to the meeting. And I'll reiterate, if folks do want to introduce themselves in the chat, please do. We love to meet new people every week in this effort to work to end homelessness and bring people together. And I see in the chat we have Lori Jenkins joining us. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for saying hello, and we're glad to have you here. So let's get started with the section of the meeting that we do every week where we talk about what's happening on the streets this week. The purpose of this section of the meeting is to try to understand what changes are taking place. We can use this as an opportunity to talk about displacements and sweeps that are taking place as well, and what we might be witnessing with those. And anything else that you know in terms of needs that people have, and how the 67 people who are in this room can help address those needs. So I will step aside. If you want to use the raise hand function, I'd be happy to call on folks and see what people are seeing out on the street. And Richard, I see you have your hand up.
Well, they're wrapping up 2 sweeps today at Burlington and at South Madison, and I talk quite a lot about sweeps. Let me show you. This is, can you see this?
It's pretty small, but let me see if I can highlight your.
This is it's kind of cryptic, but this is the 22 sweeps that I have witnessed since last year at this time. And so we're talking 700 to 800 people in this list of sweeps conducted. There's one of them done by Sound Transit. Otherwise, every one of these sweeps was conducted by the city of Tacoma in the last 12 months. So 700 to 800 people, likely more than that. But this is what we do. It's a rolling method of sweeps that has continued for this last year. So we've witnessed 20. There are 2 more scheduled in the next week or 2. So just as to show, you hear me talk about sweeps quite a bit. This is kind of what it looks like when you put it all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that perspective. And yeah, one note I will make is, unfortunately, we do know from some of the conversations that Richard and Ed Jacobs has had with folks that a number of those 700 or 800 people who've been displaced over the last year have been displaced multiple times. So it may not be 700 or 800 people. There's some of those folks who are repeatedly being chased around the city by this lack of housing and certain current city policies. So anyone else would like to share about what they're seeing on the streets this week? Yeah, Teresa.
I just want to say this week has been a week where a lot of campers on our blog have reported thefts. It's something people often talk about, how much theft goes on when encampments show up for housed people, but it's really important to recognize why people keep lugging their crap all over the city. It's because they really can't leave it alone without somebody preying on them. So the camps are a great place for people from outside the camp to come in and do harm. They're also a great place where somebody who wants to do harm can just almost become invisible in a camp and wreak havoc, not only with the neighborhood, but with the neighborhood that is really closest to them, the campsite. We had a woman out in front of the house just weeping because of all of her losses, and she didn't know how she was going to get things back. I know other people are seeing that. I just want to get it out there. A lot of victims in the camps.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. There's a lot of vulnerability in being unable to be housed and forced to live on the streets. Richard, do you have your hand up again? Or maybe that's...
I don't think so. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll put it back down. No problem. Bob.
Yeah, good morning. This isn't really, doesn't pertain to what's happening today, but at Jeff Rogers' meeting Tuesday, there were notes made and discussions about a targeted youth point in time count. And I'm just trying to find out where I can get more information about that, if this is just an initial discussion. But it was interesting and seemed that they were going to focus on unhoused youth, including those in shelters who had, if they could, already been entered into a HEMIS. But out here, that gives us an opportunity maybe to sort of do a point in time count of our own and try to get more people into HEMIS, but get more youth identified that are couch surfing and living in their vehicles. Is there more to that I can access somewhere?
Jeff, do you want to address that now, or would you like to address it during your update?
I'll address it during the update. It's something I want to talk about, but Bob, I'll reach out to you directly.
No, thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry, I didn't see you on there. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you on that. Others who've had observations this week they'd like to share. And as a reminder, you can share in the chat if you don't feel comfortable doing so publicly. I do see the chat is quite active this morning. And Richard has shared some information in there about both the community meeting that took place at Marlene's earlier in the week, as well as the story that came out over the weekend about the potential for a garbage service surcharge that would be directed at covering the costs of cleaning encampments. Anyone else who would like to share on screen? All right, so I appreciate all the comments in the chat and conversation there. Some great points being raised. Let's go ahead and move on to our first presentation of the morning. And I see Julie Easley on screen. And Julie, I'd love to allow you to talk about your youth outreach program at Coffee Oasis. And you need a screen share, right?
Yeah, that'd be great if I
Cool.
can do that.
Let me set that up for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rob.
All right, you can do that now.
Okay, excellent. And it should be popping up here for everybody. Yeah?
Yeah.
We're good? Okay, fantastic. Well, first I'll just, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and Janet, just a little shout out to her for getting me here this morning as well. So I'm the Director of Youth Programs at the Coffee Oasis in Tacoma for Pierce County. And I just want to really, my goal is, I won't drag you through a huge presentation, but my goal is just for you guys to know what resources we have and what we're doing here in Tacoma, and a little bit about the Coffee Oasis. So some people have heard of it, many have not. It started in Kitsap County, and they've been around in Kitsap County for 25 years. For us here in Tacoma, we've been there for 3 years, which is why it feels a little newer. We're a faith-based nonprofit organization, and we work with 13 to 24-year-olds. Those are our target ages. Like I said, in July, we celebrated 25 years with the Coffee Oasis. We have coffee shops. People are always curious how coffee and helping those that are marginalized and at risk, how those go together. Our coffee shop is a nonprofit coffee shop as well. So all of the proceeds go to help support our funding. It's for our youth programs. It's one of our funding sources. And we have drop-in centers, shelters, case management, mentors, life skills classes, and a lot of the wraparound services I know several of us in our community provide. And I'll get into a few specifics on that in a moment. We just, one of our main things about us is we want our shelter and our drop-in center for those that we get to come alongside of and support, that it's a safe and affirming environment for everybody is one of our main priorities. So where we're located there in Tacoma, like I said, we opened up 3 years ago. We started over by Lake Wapato. We were a 6-bed shelter, for those of you that maybe heard me talk a couple of years ago. And now we've expanded. We moved in January 2021 to Tacoma Avenue, just kitty corner from CLR. We're on the corner of 15th and Tacoma Avenue. And we're a 12-bed DCYF licensed shelter for 13 to 17-year-old youth. So that's the upstairs of our building. And I'm gonna skip to a picture so you can see that. It looks a lot different now if you've driven by our location, but if you see our spot there, the upstairs is the shelter. And like I said, it's a 12-bed shelter. And then the downstairs, the building's looking a lot different. We've been in construction now for several months, but the left side of the downstairs will be the coffee shop that'll be open to the community, of course, to access. And then on the right side, where the windows are at, is a conference room that people can sign up if they want to use. If you're like, hey, we're going to have a meeting and gather some people, you could use our conference room, and then behind that is the drop-in center. And like I said, that'll be for 13 to 24-year-olds. We have a shower, washer and dryer, place to get clean, get clothes, And then also we'll have life skills classes that are going on regularly, and just a safe place to be as well and get connected to resources. Those are pictures, obviously, of our shelter. Right now, if you drove by, you would see that awning is gone, and we've raised the windows and totally had to kind of gut out the downstairs space. So we have our outreach program. So that's what I wanted to highlight too here. We have a federal grant for our outreach program, and we really is what we're doing is we're doing two types of outreach. We're doing the street level engagement outreach, where we're really just going through encampments, going to skate parks, really trying to have a presence to let people know where resources are. We work with so many of you all in the community partners, so we are constantly doing referrals too. We really believe in working together to provide the best supports to those that could use that. So we're on the streets, and then also we work quite a bit with the Tacoma Public Schools, some with Puyallup High School, and some more with Franklin Pierce School District as well, with getting referrals. And our outreach team will meet with the youth at the school. And that can be anywhere from once a week to maybe twice a month, really on what the needs are. And we start working on what type of goals, what they're experiencing. And we do what we call mobile case management. So really our outreach team, like all the other outreach teams, we're mobile. So we go and meet the youth where they're at, pick them up, get them to appointments, take them to, get their documents, whatever it is that we can do to help remove barriers to make it more accessible is what we're doing. We just named our drop-in center. So we're kind of excited about this. It's called The Port, and that just stands for Providing Opportunities and Resources in Tacoma. And I mentioned what some of those what we offer there. The next couple of forms I'll kind of skip over. This is more for like the school districts, but just so that you have an idea, we do have a process of, what are we working on with each youth? And oftentimes, as you know, there's so much complex trauma and multiple people, one person represents sometimes multiple people, especially when we're talking about youth. So maybe it's a guardian, parent, brother, sister. We just got a couple sisters that came into our shelter. And so we want to be able to see how we can help support the whole system together that the family unit is experiencing. Our outreach core values, we really start off with, we want to build rapport and just a sense of being non-judgmental, building trusting relationships. Mutuality is a really key thing to us. It isn't about what can I do for you, but how can we work together in this, and really helping them identify through like motivational interviewing and just different trauma-informed techniques of helping them identify what their priorities are and what that looks like to get them to those goals. Consistency, showing up all the time and making sure that people don't fall through the cracks, that they're not forgotten. We use HMIS, of course, and then we also have our own just tracking systems to make sure that those on our outreach, our participants, that they're hearing from us on a weekly basis. We really, really want that. Productivity, we've found once more there's more rapport and they're seeing us consistently show up, we then tend to see a little bit more productivity, right? Because they feel like, oh, they're actually going to come back next week and they're going to come back the following week and stuff. And so then we start really working through some of those goals that they have, whether it's resumes, jobs, getting IDs, and the many other types of support they need, and immediate support of bringing, you know, our cars are filled with whether it's sleeping bags and water bottles and hammer, you know, I think our whole outreach team can open up our car and have a lot of resources that we can immediately help bring some support to somebody. We like to under promise and over deliver to those that we get to support. And I do say we get to support because it always feels like a privilege to enter into somebody's story. And when they're already experiencing so much vulnerability and hardship, and knowing that when you share trauma, that it's exhausting and that there's a mental toll to that. And so we really come into that respecting the just the whole person in that. And then some other things, some other things that are really important to us, that if you were like, oh, I'm going to refer somebody to the Coffee Oasis Youth Shelter, let's say, or to their outreach program that we're excited about. So we have, you know, a resource navigation, and there's many other organizations that we are working closely with. We've been part of YSAN. I think a couple people are part of that on here, for the youth that are connected to the courts, court-connected youth, and Tacoma Boat Builders. We do a once a week partnership with them where our youth get to go and participate in their programming. So we're really working hard with our organizations to go, hey, let's keep using each other's space as well. We just started a partnership with the UW YMCA, which is just a block and a half from us. We're really excited about that. We take our youth there 4 times a week, and they get free membership there. And it's a great way, one, to bond with them, but also for them to be able to address just their, you know, physical health, you know, whether it's they want to walk around the track, or, you know, laugh and play ping pong, and, you know, maybe they want to play basketball and those types of things. And so just to be able to take time, especially as we're looking at our younger teens and teenagers and young adults, for them to be able to play where maybe they've lost a lot of that opportunity because of just hardships, and to be able to laugh. And so we've been excited about that. We're there every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at the Y. And then, of course, education is one of our main priorities, of getting our youth re-engaged, our young adults re-engaged in education and what that looks like for them. And we have daily workshops for 2 hours also that we have community partners come in, and that could be yoga, art. We often are focusing on the whatever topic it is for the month, whether it's LGBTQ plus awareness, and wanting to make sure that we're doing educational things around that, or whether it's Black History Month, or you know, women, whatever that is that we're learning and growing together. Field trips, of course, you know, it's fall, so we already have our field trips lined up for the pumpkin patch, and wanting to do something fun with all the holidays. We take them trick-or-treating as well, even though they're teenagers, because they have oftentimes had those type of positive experiences too. And then crisis intervention. And we also work with, and me in particular, work with many youth that are victims of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. So I've done that prior to my work with Coffee Oasis for 9 years, and have been able to bring my training and expertise in working with that vulnerable population. We see a lot of the intersection with our youth in our shelter that have also been victimized in that way as well. So providing support and the right resources. And then I mentioned we are in the midst of construction. So our drop-in center, I actually should have edited this morning. It looks like it's going to be more like November we're opening instead of October, November. We weren't quite sure. And our coffee shop will open up at the same time. And we're also just launching our mentorship program and our volunteer program. We're using a software system, maybe some of you have heard of it, called Better Impact. And we heard about it through some of our volunteers, and Point Defiance uses it, and several other larger organizations. And so we're just getting ready to launch that as well for Pierce County. So that is us in a nutshell. I hope I didn't go too fast. I think I just had 15 minutes. And so I think I hit it right on the nose there for that. So I can stop sharing my screen. And I don't know if Rob, you can let me know if we open it up to questions or not.
Yeah, we definitely have time for that. And I see Jan has her hand up.
Yes, Julie, I'm so glad that you're here. Yeah, I met Julie at the Pierce County Task Force on Sex Trafficking, and I was bemoaning the fact that in the outreach work that I do on the streets, we hear a lot of victimization of youth or folks in general on the streets. And we've got numbers for all other kinds of services, but there was no number to call as a resource for to help those who might be victims of trafficking. And Julie's put in the chat, yes, we do. Coffee Oasis has outreach people. So, you know, at this meeting, we've had people like Lavada and Richard and others who have actually seen trafficking go on right in the streets of Tacoma. So what we need, Julie, I wrote down the numbers for Renee and Anthony, but what is a good number for those of us who are in the streets, in encampments, and we hear of victimization, we meet these victims face to face. What is a good number to call where somebody will actually answer the number? Because that's another problem that we have as we're in the real world. People don't necessarily answer their phone. So what's a good number that those of us that do outreach workers and we're confronted with the specific problem of youth trafficking, who do we call?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for asking that. So our outreach team, so Renee, I don't know if you guys were able to get, and I could drop it in the chat here too, but her phone number is 253-693. Actually, I got to put on my glasses really quick just to make sure. Yes, 693-8184. And Anthony's phone number is 253-693-0930. And I'm also going to give you mine. And my phone number is 253-235-3154. And truthfully, man, with those three phone numbers, we almost always pick up our phone. And if we don't, and the only time we don't is either maybe if I'm in the middle of a presentation or if we're already with, you know, somebody that we're providing support for, but otherwise we'll get back to you right away. And we see the trafficking and sexual exploitation all the time, especially right behind where we're at. And we've even had, you know, people coming to our door going, hey, I met a girl and you know, she was staying there and stuff like that. So we are very strategic with our space around us as well, and doing education, even with those on the, that are maybe on the opposite side of that. So give us a call. And as you all are doing your outreach too, and you're running into unsheltered 13 to 17-year-olds, please call us. I mean, we're staffed 24/7. We have always minimum of 2 full trained on staff during other hours between 2 and midnight. We have 3 people staffed, plus we have, and that doesn't include even myself and the outreach team. Those are just shelter staff. So even if you called our phone number for the shelter, you will always get a hold of somebody. And truthfully, because we're licensed, we have to answer our phone. So if you called our just general shelter number, we are there 24/7. It could be 2 a.m. in the morning, and you are out maybe doing an overnight outreach, and you find somebody that needs shelter right away, call us. We've had police officers drop youth off in the middle of the night to us at our doorstep. You know, we want to be accessible, and we want to partner and come up with solutions together. So
Thank you, Julie. And there's been a request in the chat. If you can drop those phone numbers probably at the end of this into the chat, it'd be really helpful, especially since the chat is something that gets published on the website. So we have a couple more questions. Let's go to Kenneth.
Before I go, can you do Toby's question that was from the chat?
Yeah, let's see. So what Toby asked is he's understanding that some daytime resources are available for TAY youth, but overnight beds are for up to 18 years old only. Is that correct?
yeah, thanks for asking. That is correct. So our license is for minors. So we're really 13 to 17 in our shelter, and the youth in our shelter can stay with us for up to 150 days. So that makes it a little different too than sometimes some of the short-term shelters. They actually, it becomes, you know, I hate to say home because a shelter is not someone's home, but we do the best we can to let them catch their breath. You know, they have their bed, their dresser, their closet space, and things like that to be able to try and come up with better long-term solutions. And then the drop-in center does not have any beds in it for the 18 to 24-year-olds. So, you know, we're working with other organizations that provide that type of service, but they will have a place to come shower and get food and get connected to those resources and stuff too.
Great. And go ahead, Kenneth.
I have two fairly quick questions. I know that at your last location, you all struggled with your caseloads, with them having to be smaller than you were expecting. What is your caseload cap now?
Yeah. Oh man, you know, we haven't done any caps. We've just gotten more efficient. And I think in the beginning, it was really knowing who our community partners are and who's doing what to know how to resource things better. So right now, as far as our outreach team, we have around 80 to 85 active participants that we are supporting. And then part of our program, you know, as well, for those that are maybe leaving our youth shelter is we continue with aftercare. So they're assigned to somebody that will really continue with them for a minimum of 2 years, but as long as they want. So we, you know, work with people up to 24 years old. I've had somebody that turned 25 this year, and she was like, "Oh no, are you leaving me?" And I'm like, "No, of course not." Like, you know, we're not, we don't quite draw too hard of a line either, because the relationships are real, right? So relationships is fundamental. Did I answer that?
That was very well, thank you. And then my second question, I apologize, is going to sound a little insulting at first, but it's very important.
Yeah.
When your group was first introduced to Tacoma, they took a very questionable stance on LGBTQ youth. Has that changed?
Yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, that was one of the, to be really direct, financial supporters that took a strong position versus the Coffee Oasis. So we honestly, our LGBTQ plus community are disproportionately represented within the young adult homeless population. So of the youth we serve, our youth are probably about 60%, 62% representative in that community. They're incredibly marginalized. And so we work really hard to provide resources and support. And that is not, I mean, that is not a barrier at all. meet with Matthew, the executive director from the Oasis Center, regularly. They're actually coming to our location next month. We do trainings together. We're looking to build a support group in our space for those that identify within the LGBTQ plus community, or an ally within that community can be, a part of that too. So I would say that if you, we hire people within that community. We, it is not at all problematic. I don't know if that's the right word of what you're asking, but I hope I answered that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And I see Bob has his hand up as well.
Thanks, Rob. Julie, nice to see you this morning.
Yeah, good to see you, Bob.
You know the Gig Harbor KP area really well.
Yeah.
We still struggle to find, identify, and provide services to many of our homeless, but more so we're finding growth in the youth segment. In the last month, we've been able to connect with Nathan Betts, Pierce County Sheriff, who knows all of the locations where the kids are now holding up and couch surfing and moving around, primarily the KP. Thank you for the phone numbers. We're going to start using them more, but is there an opportunity, and you don't have to answer right now, but looking for an opportunity to maybe have Coffee Oasis do a ride along with Nathan Betts at some point before the end of the year and start to provide your services out here as well as what TRM is doing? So I just wanted to throw that at you.
Bob, I love it. If you can get us all together, get me connected to your contact, I would do a ride along next week and plan a few of them. 100%. And as you know, the KP's dear to me, and we have some clients that we already work with there. And yeah, so I would love it. Yeah, thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, it's on the way. Thanks very much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
And let's wrap up this section with one more question. I see Jay has her hand up.
Actually, it's in the same area of Gig Harbor. I heard that you were working with Gig Harbor's, I believe it's Hope down here for youth, but I believe that was 18 to 21. Are you still working with that group in Gig Harbor? And my son goes to the alternative school out here, so I really need to talk to you because alternative school.
Yeah, absolutely. So so please contact me, and yes, Harbor Hope is one of our community partners. We work with anybody who's wanting to help provide these services to those that desperately need them, and that are providing safe and affirming spaces as well, to line up with that and equity. So yes, we do work with them. Harbor Hope has changed, as you probably know, a few times, kind of their age groups and things like that. I've placed several people in Harbor Hope's program. We have somebody there now, and have met with their team regularly. I hear from Liam regularly and stuff like that. So the answer is yes. We do work together, and definitely Henderson Bay. I've met with the principal there, and so I'd love to talk with you about that. We work a lot with Willie Stewart in Tacoma, and Oakland High School in Tacoma, as well as Gates in the Franklin Pierce School District, which are all different types of alternative schools to provide these resources. And so I would love to, please reach out to me and we can get together.
Definitely. And the other factor to that is being with the alternative school. A lot of the kids that I see and work with or know of their situations are all kids that aren't comfortable going to the other program because of personal choices. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because they do need that secondary outlet because they don't feel comfortable going to Hope House currently. But half of the kids that I do get do go that way. So it really just depends on the mindset of the kiddo.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk more about that. I'd love to.
Well, thank you, Julie, for sharing the information about your programs, and thank you to Jan for queuing this up for us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jan. Thanks everybody for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, so let's move on to our next presentation, and I'd like to invite Cynthia Stewart to talk with us from the League of Women Voters. Cynthia is going to talk about voter registration for those who are currently homeless.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
You can. Let me give you that capability. Just a moment. All right, you should be able to do that now.
Thank you. So I want to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to do this. The League of Women Voters, for those of you who don't know, most of you have heard the name, but you may not realize that we're an organization that was founded 102 years ago. And our function is to empower voters and preserve democracy. And we were created by people who were engaged in the suffrage movement before women got the right to vote. And they formed the League because they wanted people who then had the right to vote to be well informed and to use their vote wisely. So that is the background with which I am coming to you today. We think that people who are without housing are probably pretty well disenfranchised. And so wanted to get you to help us get as many people registered as possible. Another piece of background information is that the auditor's office has said that about 85% of the people eligible to vote are registered, but that 15% is also important. And we have this election coming up and some significant threats to democracy. So we really want to get everybody who can vote to vote. And I would add that we're nonpartisan. So why is it important to vote? The people who represent us should be chosen by us, and that includes people without housing. And if they don't vote, they don't have a voice. So what's coming up in this next election, as most of you know, are legislative races, some of the county races, and then the Secretary of State. So these are very, very important offices, and it's really significant if they don't vote. In 2023, then next year, there will be a lot more races on the ballot back to the municipal ones, the cities, the port, school districts, park districts, and so forth. And this is just a small graphic just showing these are the decisions that elected officials at the local level make. They make decisions about our library services, our streets, our traffic, the police, the courts, the schools, all of that are decisions that people that we elect make. And so again, for people without housing, it's really important for them to weigh in. Voting is power. It helps us maintain our democracy, and it's important to be part of influencing decision making. So one of the other factors here is that most people don't think their vote counts. But in Washington State, we've had some very close elections. In 2004, there was only 133 vote difference in the governor's race, if you can imagine that statewide. In 2015, there were 8 Pierce County races that were determined by fewer than 30 votes. And in the August primary in 2022, this year, only 40% of the eligible voters voted statewide. In Pierce County, only 36% voted. Now, these are people who are already registered, and 36% was the second to the lowest in the state. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that our clients and our, for that matter, the staff in your organizations are enfranchised. So I'm going to put this in the chat as well, but it's so easy to register to vote in Washington State now. You can do it online. And what I am assuming is that people without housing who get services from you all, you can help them go online if they can't do it themselves. They can also do it by mail. There's a form that's also unfortunately online, but it can be printed out and given to people. And then up to the day of the election, people can do it in person at the Pierce County Elections Office. So all year round, people register to vote, and you can get automatic voter registration with a driver's license. Libraries, city halls, many events have people circulating with not petitions, but voter registration information. And so this isn't just because there's an election, but we should be doing this all year round. One of the biggest issues, of course, is the lack of an address. And the RCW says no person shall be disqualified because they lack a traditional residential address. And so a voter who resides in a shelter, park, motorhome, marina, etc., whatever they determine to be their residence that lacks a traditional address still has to have this requirement. So, and most importantly, they have to live in the area at least 30 days before the election. So how do they do that? Many shelters will allow mail pickup and can be used for voter registration. So if you're not a shelter, but you have a client who needs an address, you can potentially refer them to a nearby shelter so that they can use that as their address. We used to have a list of organizations that would allow their addresses to be used, but we haven't been able to update that for the last couple of years, so I'm not providing that right now. So anyway, we encourage you to help. Now, one of the most popular documents that we have found when we're out doing voter registration is this one. It's a document produced by the ACLU about how what happens when you have a felony conviction. And so it's really super important, and that can be downloaded and printed. And again, I will put this link in the chat as well. For some reason, there are just lots and lots of people who don't have the information about their rights as a felon. And there's also more information at this location. So that is really all I had. If I can answer any questions, I will try to do that. And I just really want to try and motivate you to get our clients and the people we serve out to be enfranchised, to use their vote power. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Do folks have some questions? There's been a few comments in the chat I saw. Let's see if I can tease any of those out as questions. There was, I think you addressed Sally's question about how unhoused people get their mailed ballots if they don't have a mail address, if they use the shelter as a mailing address. And there was also the suggestion that maybe we should encourage governments not to sweep people within 30 days of an election.
Good point.
Couple of hands up. I see Teresa's hands up, and then Sally.
So I am also a member of the League of Women Voters and have deep admiration for Cynthia, our fearless leader. I'm wondering if you could mention the thing about the juvenile detention center that is happening to get young people registered. I don't know if people would be interested in that, but
I'm not up to speed on that, Teresa. Do you have current information?
Rosemary?
My most recent information is that they're working with people from the family, forget the name of it now, from the detention group. But it didn't work as well to get a lot of folks registered as we hoped with our small initial project. But there are videos that the county auditor's office made that youth participated in, and people from UW were mentors for that as well. So it's a program that I think will grow, and the focus is important on getting youth to take part in things that they can have some power over, as you were saying, Cynthia.
So not related to this group, but we are doing pretty extensive work in the high schools to register high school students. So, Sally,
Great.
Looks like you're next.
Hi, Cynthia. Thank you so much for the presentation. A lot of the unhoused people in Tacoma are not in shelters. They're in tents, they're in doorways, they're under trees, et cetera. And so one of the mechanisms we need to figure out is how they get their ballots. Because they have a general address. So your point about being in the area is really helpful, but how to actually get that ballot into that person's hands so they can fill it out continues to be a challenge. So we all need to be thinking about how to do that. Thank you.
No, I didn't. I wasn't trying to imply that everybody is in a shelter, but rather that many of the shelters will allow people to pick up their mail there, even if they're not residing there. So, but I don't have a current list, unfortunately.
Thank you for that.
We need to find a way. We need to find a way for people to get their ballots. It's really important.
Is there an option? I know at times the county auditor has had the ability for people to do kind of a provisional ballot at different locations around the community, including some of the libraries in the past. Is that one potential option?
I think so. I'm not up to speed on that particular mention either.
Okay.
I can do some research on that and get back to you though.
Great. That'd be fantastic. Jay, I see you have your hand up.
I'm not sure if it's still true. We would have to investigate this. If anybody is from Associated Ministries here, they might know. But Associated Ministries used to have a mail program where you could have their address as your address when you were on the street and not using a services there. There was also another program in Seattle, and I can't remember if it transferred over here, that was a mail service and a bank service together. Those might be two options to look into and see if we can't get a similar service started here. But basically, it was just a location that was rented so that they had a physical address that somebody just processed and held their stuff with them.
Yeah, thank you. And Associated Ministries was one of the organizations on our list that we had, but again, we haven't updated it. I came to this group when we were meeting in person 2 years in a row, and then we didn't meet in person anymore. So we kind of lost track of some of this during the COVID situation.
Yeah.
But I still want you to try and get your clients signed up.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And let's see. Yeah, Sally's asking, can we ask unhoused people where they currently get their mail, which would be helpful. All right. So any final questions for Cynthia before we move on with our agenda today?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Cynthia. And as always. So we are almost at the 10 o'clock hour. Rather than go into our breakout conversation now, I think I will shift to our regular government updates. And so since we're just a couple of minutes early for that, Caleb, would you like to provide any updates from the city of Tacoma?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Good morning, everyone. Some big updates that are coming up here is study session on the 27th, this next Tuesday. We are bringing our homeless service update, so our regular quarterly one, but attached to that is our strategy update and development. And that looks like it'll be a couple of weeks out when it's actually in hand and paper form, but council will be briefed on all the materials beforehand, and we'll be able to have a conversation about that during that study session there. So please tune in, and if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me. I plan on being in the office after that, and we can discuss anything that you overheard. And then Rob asked me to give an update on 35th and Pacific. 35th and Pacific, for some of you that are not familiar with that, is being developed currently right now to have a mitigation site. It is a two-phase kind of approach. The first one is going to be a mitigation site, and then it's going to develop into micro shelters down the road, probably sometime in the summer. So we are doing kind of pre-work for that second phase in preparation now, and so that's why it's such a big property that you see. But it is supposed to serve 50 individuals, and we are hoping to be online next month in October. We are in the contract negotiation with Tacoma Rescue Mission to be the provider for that site. And I know that a lot of you have a lot of questions, so I will stop there and open it up.
Great. And so as a reminder, folks can just use the raise hand function to ask their questions. We wanted to have this opportunity to have a little bit longer dialogue about what's happening at 35th and Pacific. One question I did want to ask is the intention still to try to prioritize the folks who are in the encampment at 34th and Pacific to move into the new site? And how many of those 50 slots potentially could be used by that population?
Yeah, that is to prioritize the 34th and Pacific encampment, and that's something that we have told the community and have been working. TRM and the HEAL team have been working with that community to communicate that effectively, knowing that that space is starting to be designated with that. The HEAL team and TRM did do a count to be able to say that we could support that community if they transitioned over there. We also do have, we're going to have available parking over there too as well. So it's not as if they won't be able to, they have to leave their vehicles or their stuff. So there will be some of that while we're transitioning into phase 2 as well. So that comes to mind. Those are the two things that come to mind to answer your question, Rob.
Okay. And again, that number of folks who are in the current encampment, maybe I missed it.
I don't have that number right now in terms of current, but at the time when we did it, I think they thought there was about 30 individuals there when they were first. We took a snapshot picture and tried to get an idea of the folks that were there currently before the word got out that people would be prioritizing, so that people wouldn't come to that thinking that they had first right of refusal. So we did want to let the 34th and Pacific folks know that were currently there at that time, and I think that was done about a month and a half ago to give them priority.
Okay, and I see Richard in the chat asking, will the 34th and Pacific encampment be cleared when the new site opens?
Yes, part of the community. The meeting is that's the biggest concern, is being able to host a shelter and an unauthorized encampment. And so we will be doing an encampment removal simultaneously as we're opening up to help folks transition into that shelter.
And then thank you, Zara, in the chat for offering information about the conversations you had at the camp on Monday. That's helpful as well. Teresa, I see you have your hand up.
So thank you for that, Caleb. We've been anxious to hear exactly what's going on. And there's another issue, which is even if there were only 30, so maybe there are 50, maybe there are 30, but even if there are only 30 and you end up with only 50 slots, all throughout Tacoma, people are being told that when that place opens up, they're going to have a place to take the people who are swept from our streets. And that's disingenuous. I mean, it's really not a legitimate thing to say. I've heard it at city council meetings. I've heard it from people coming to talk with our neighborhood about the issues on our block. And I'm quite certain that other neighbors are hearing this as well. So really a reality check here is that being told, as we are being told, that they're waiting to do the sweep for the G Street mural campground until that site opens up. Somebody should tell them to stop saying that, because there's no relationship really. There's not going to be space for the people on my block when that space opens up.
Well, I can definitely pass that on along. I'm not in the policy discussions necessarily around the camping ban. I have been briefed on how that impacts. But in my specific role, I understand where you're coming from, Teresa. We are trying to continue always to expand in shelter availability. And if we always try to stay nimble and be responsive and try to meet as much as we can in terms of the needs. And so that's why we're trying to build that out, that specific site out, so that we can also meet the needs that the entire community and city needs. And that's why we're also working with, talking with the provider about safe parking. I think a lot of you have heard about the TRM expansion. So just trying to get enough to be able to meet the needs of the people who are experiencing unsheltered.
Thanks for that. And Jay, you have your hand up.
I hear what you just said, and I understand what you're working on, but you are in a direct position of dealing with those situations, and you can have the strongest voice within your own institution stating as loudly as you possibly can that the resources available do not meet the need and demand, and that you cannot fulfill the job and continue to do the work that you are doing to these people and equitably say that we have housing for them, because that is just not true. And so we are asking you to really pull it in within yourself, to stand up and share your experiences you are living through on a daily basis with your team, with your management above and the people that are in charge of your job. Because currently, we need you to advocate for the people that you are working for, not just working on doing the job.
Yeah, Jay, I think that we always want to be able to brief the people above us and council members about realistic expectations. I think that that is an important aspect that we do on a daily basis, and what my team does. So I want to commit that to you, that we do try to brief on realistic expectations and what is actually doable and the time frame that they're hoping for. So that I can continue to commit to and make sure that they know that, because as you may know, and everyone here is I'm referred to as the subject matter expert, and my team is the subject matter experts into this, and we can give a perspective on strategy wise too as well. Unfortunately, there's also other voices in the room that go against, some of the things that we want to do and the approaches we want to do, and I know that council takes into account everybody's voice and what their concerns are too as well. And so I know it's a tough job for them to get it from all sides, and I can continue to be advocating from the side of people who are experiencing homelessness, to the work that you are all doing, to the providers and the challenges that they may face by some of the policies that they're trying to put forward.
I appreciate that, Caleb. And I do understand that you really are trying to do your best, but I just feel the need to put it out there that we all do believe that you can be a powerful influence from the inside. On that same token, how can we affect those other groups of people? I understand we have engineers that are making plans, but they cannot justifiably make those plans if they're not on the foot or on their feet down there seeing how these people are impacted by their housing. So, like, are our engineers going to the tiny housing communities? Are they seeing firsthand what their suggestions are applicable to? Can we get them in a position to see what their knowledge and education base are affecting and doing?
So Jay, is your question the engineers from the city side?
Yeah, it's engineers and other departments in subject that are not necessarily working from the basis of understanding or from experience or from just working on the understanding of, we have these numbers, we're going to fulfill this position on the basis of our knowledge.
So a couple of things, I just maybe I might be able to answer your question, maybe I won't be able to, so please tell me if I don't. But I want to go back to your previous question, because the previous director of neighborhood and community services said that if we do our job very well, we are able to get and meet the needs of what we're trying to do and be successful. And that's something that's stuck with the neighborhood and community services department is we want to be able to do our job really effective so that we can get to what we want to get to and what we hear back from you guys. So I just want to be able to make sure that that is something that's echoed without neighborhood and community services. Secondly, when we do development of a shelter, it is actually a pretty, it is collaborated throughout the city pretty extensively. Public Works does a lot of the development of it. I don't know I don't know about grading and what type of cap ends are needed and all of the materials and things like that. So we do work with our Public Works and the engineers to be able to develop these sites. And over time, they work in a couple of different ways. They work in with us. We run the project and we give the insight. We work with the actual providers and what they need in order to effectively be able to run a shelter. And so those are things that we're doing. And then we have a lot of administrative support. This is probably, I mean, for some, it's the number one issue. The other one is 1B with safety. And the city has done a job to respond to that. And every department is trying to have some type of impact and be able to help with this, with trying to help people get out from encampments and unsafe environments and hopefully to stable housing. And that's part of the strategy. The strategy, and I think what we've talked about here, is housing. It's to get people housed. It's not to get people sheltered. Shelter is just a bypass to get to the point of getting people housed and getting them in stable and safe environments. And so that's, you know, this is only supposed to be a response to get to the overall goal.
You did answer my question. I would push for the concept of you need to work with your providers, not intermittent conversation with drastic feedback.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. And I want to take the questions from folks who have their hands raised now, and then we do need to move on to the next item. So let's go ahead and go to Kathy.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Caleb. Again, I want to go back to what Jay said about the importance of your position. You come to this meeting every week, and we appreciate you for that. And I just want to encourage you, because you are the very first person that I've heard within the city staff say housing is a human right, full stop. Those words in your voice are stuck in my brain. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for continuing to be a voice for the voiceless. So please keep that in mind, because like she said, you are one person embedded within the system who can move the needle on behalf of the very people that we care so much about. I'm very distraught over this new version of a camping ban and that's being proposed. Very distraught. So if anybody wants to drop me any suggestions in the chat, personally to me, about what we can do, because it's very concerning. And if you have any suggestions as well, anybody, I'm open to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And we will talk
Kathy.
we will talk briefly here in a moment about the current status of that legislation and next steps.
Thank you.
Yeah. Zoe.
Hey, everyone. Caleb, my question for you is, you know, as you're hearing Zara talk about, there are at least 50 people there, you know, working off of something I hear the city do all the time is working off of numbers they collected 4 to 8 weeks prior, and things move faster than that. You know, that's just a bad system for this type of work. I think I know the answer to this question, but if you cannot house everyone at that site, will the camp still be cleared? Yeah, that's my primary question. What I'm hearing so far reminds me a lot of the disaster with People's Park sweep at the beginning of 2020. Everyone at that camp was being told that there would be shelter space for them when there were 35 beds, and people were waiting around to be told this and were just abandoned in the middle of the pouring rain. So yeah, I have a lot of concerns. Will this camp be swept if they can't get everyone into the stability site?
Is that, so Zoe, just for 34th and Pacific, if we're not able to get everybody into shelter?
Yes.
Is that question? Yeah. So we always, one is the Boise decision always comes into play, I think, and I'm under the impression the same would come into play no matter what in terms of how we interact with folks and whether we do encampment removals. So it will be shelter availability. It might not be everybody might be able to go to the 35th and Pacific, but they will also be monitoring shelter availability throughout the entire system as well.
Okay, so, you know, we will be moving people miles away from the services they're receiving in the community they've developed.
it's possible that they would have to do that.
I mean, it's not possible. It's what happens every time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And Monique, your hand's up.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So I just wanted to address Jay real quick. In terms of government agencies, I have often been met with rigidity, but I can say that the engineering and the plans that I worked with Tacoma, they're very flexible after the fact, right? So if we see that something is not working, they've been really good with adjusting for us. So they've been fluid with our plans, and that is often difficult to get a government agency to do. So just to give you a little bit of a warm and fuzzy, once they engineer these things and you get your plans set, if they're not working, they listen and adjust so that we can make changes in the plan.
Thank you so much, Monique, because it really is a concern for me seeing us doing these strong constructions and seeing these programs get feedback that is so strong and not knowing if we're going to be able to alter that, because that initial will really get people to say, no, I'm not even going to try to do this project. That is nothing like what I was looking at.
Right.
And so if we don't have that room to budge, then a lot of people are just going to drop their project. So they need to know they have that room to adjust.
Yes, in terms of the infrastructure, you may not be able to adjust what the site looks like, but in terms of what you need and what you learn as you're running the site, they have been very helpful and very fluid.
Thank you for that. And Jeffrey, I saw your hand shot up as well, so why don't we have you, and then we'll close this out.
Caleb, what are the city's plans once 35th and Pacific and the Rise Center are complete? Are there any other plans currently to put up some more sites or do anything with the RVs?
Yeah, so I mentioned a couple of those, Jeffrey. So one is that 35th and Pacific would be a phase 2, so would be able to add more capacity to that specific location if we are able to, and it just depends on how fast we can really get the micro shelters. Is a lot of the cases. It's not necessarily the space as you have seen. The other one is that we are working, we're as close as we've probably ever been. I think that's probably a fair statement to say with a provider, because we have come to the point where we've gotten the 3-legged stool of funding, location, and capable provider. So we are in that early discussion now that we've hit those 3 legs and trying to work through contracting so that we can do safe parking. I don't know in terms of how much of it is going to be RV because that's still something that we're learning, but we are committing to trying to get RVs into safe parking though. So it's not something that we're saying and working with those specific providers to be able to do that. And then we're also, there's a TRM expansion project in the loops for permanent shelter for the men's side.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Caleb, for taking questions.
Oh, I will say, I mean, I know a lot of you know I'm fairly young to this, and so I am listening to you guys and seeing how I can continue to grow in this position to support you all as providers and advocates and people that are doing this work, to support the people who are unsheltered, and to do it in a way and through this system, because as you may all know, sometimes government systems require a specific way of going about things. And so I want to be able to kind of honor everybody and be able to do the best that I can. So, you know, if you guys want to talk to me about, you know, ideas that you have, I am very open to listening and talking and having lunch with any one of you. So please let me know how I can continue to support you all. For future support from you all, I know that was kind of in one of the questions. You know, when we do community meetings, when we do engagement with the community, especially sometimes what we think of the opposite side, it's always good to have folks that are on the ground or that are other subject matter experts to talk about these issues and why it's important for everybody, because often they just hear from the government and just very what they call government needs language. And so just you know, keep that in mind when we do more community meetings and being a part of that. And as we start to meet more in person, to bring that support on some of the things that you all want to see with, you know, shelter additions, housing, and things like that, and addressing the needs of the people who are unsheltered.
Thank you, Caleb. All right, so now let's shift gears over to Jeff Rogers from Pierce County Human Services.
Yes, good morning. Sorry, that's bad lighting. The first thing I want to share is that we received finally back from Lehigh acknowledgement of an award letter we gave them for some funding. They'll be placing a tiny house village in Spanaway, hopefully on Pacific Avenue out that way. It will have 65 houses and will house up to 80 people. The hope is that that will be in place by December 1st and that folks can start occupying hopefully in December. So that process, which was kind of lengthy, has finally been completed and hopefully will be successful between now and December 1st, getting this project up and running. They still have to purchase it. They have an agreement to purchase it, but the purchase and sale has not been finalized. So hopefully that's successful. On another note, as Bob mentioned, we are planning to do a never done before point in time count of homeless youth. And when we say youth, we're talking ages 12 to 24 is that youth category, unsheltered, unaccompanied, 12 to 17-year-olds, and sheltered and unsheltered 18 to 24-year-olds. It's coming in October. It's coming very soon. We're working very closely with all of the youth providers. The challenge we have is, where do we find youth? We hear from the street outreach teams that there aren't persons 24 and under in encampments. They don't really find a lot of them. So we're trying to be creative and identify locations. We're struggling. But one of the things we're hoping to do is we have a by name list in our HMIS of over 800 persons that are in that qualification criteria of that age group, who we're going to attempt to reach out to and try to identify their housing status. With this population, we can count not just unsheltered, but also, at risk. Yeah, not unsheltered and sheltered, but those that are at risk of becoming homeless. And many on that 800 number list are at risk. So we're going to try to identify those persons as well. If you want to volunteer, it's on October 20th, coming soon. You're more than welcome to reach out to me and we could get you connected. It's interesting. We've never done one. We'll learn from this and improve if we do one again. We told HUD we would do it. We don't know who told HUD we would do it, but it ended up in an application that we would do it because we do our annual count every year in January. But somehow in one of our applications to HUD for funding, we said we will do a youth specific point in time count. And so now's come the time to do that. That's my update for today.
Thank you, Jeff. And if you want to drop your contact info in the chat for people who have an interest in that, it'd be good to have that posted.
Yeah. I'll just say quickly that we are working with staff from Coffee Oasis. They come to our regular meetings. We're working with all the youth providers in the community. And to quickly answer, Janet put a comment about the kids in school districts. We have some outreach teams that are working with certain school districts, but years ago, we tried to work with school districts and gather data from school districts and work with them. And we had a couple that were excited to do that. And one that was offended that we wanted to collect data from them. And so they reported us to the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, who in turn reached out to the Department of Commerce, who were funded under to do this kind of work with. And we got our hands slapped really hard for reaching out to school districts. But we do have Coffee Oasis and the Reach Center who do this type of outreach to this population, who have relationships with several school districts, Sumner, Puyallup, Franklin Pierce, I believe Bethel, Tacoma. So we're making progress with some of them, but we've been instructed during our point in time counts, we're not allowed to coordinate with school districts. Okay, and Angie Moore, I'll put my information in the my contact information in the chat. And if you could just email me, we'll get you connected if you want to volunteer. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Did I miss anything else? No, not Eatonville, Betty. No, we're not. Currently, no one's working with Eatonville that I'm aware of. Okay, that's it. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. All right, so let's shift over to Jenny from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Sorry that I missed you all. Hi, Jeff. Sorry that I missed you all last week. I hope everyone's been doing well. Our COVID hospitalizations are down again this week, which is great. Data are showing that we have the lowest rate of hospitalizations that we've seen since March. Bivalent boosters are now available to all our clinics for anyone that's eligible, and you're eligible for a booster if you're over 12 years old and it's been 2 months since your last vaccine. So that is a lot of folks probably. The booster offers improved protection against the currently circulating strain. So I encourage you all to go and get boosted with the bivalent booster, and to encourage your guests, clients, family, friends, everyone to do that as we go into the fall. I was reading something this morning as well about how, since we've all been, since the last few years, like we had lower flu cases, lower flu deaths, like lower rates of all different kinds of viruses, especially childhood viruses. And now we're possibly going to see a resurgence of some of those things. So just a good time to get up to date on things. If you have clients and you have questions about flu clinics or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me. We still have resources through our contractor, Discovery Health, to do on-site shelter and day center vaccine clinics for COVID. And we are also working on monkeypox, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But there hasn't been a lot of uptake. I keep bugging our shelter folks to let us come back and do a little bit more COVID vaccine stuff to make sure folks are boosted. And hopefully we can do some more of that. The good news is we haven't had outbreaks recently, so hopefully there's good vaccine coverage out there. Other communicable disease information that I can share. So monkeypox has been a concern for folks. As you know, we are cautiously optimistic about it because we're seeing weekly cases stabilizing here locally, as well as in the state and nationwide. It's too early to say that the outbreak is over, but we are really continuing to work on providing multiple vaccine opportunities to the community. We are setting up one of our adult family homes for isolation, should anyone need that, which so far has not been a need. If you're an outreach team or you're in a position to hand out some 4x6 cards about monkeypox that has our call center number on it, and that would be helpful to you in your work, let me know. I'm happy to deliver those to you. And finally, our webpage has been updated to include data and demographics. So it has case counts, it has demographics, and that'll be updated 3 days a week. So I'll share that link for folks who are interested. There is let's talk about more disease stuff before I share final link for something. But polio, I've been getting questions from folks about polio. I sent an email out last week with some key things to understand. I will keep this short, but reach out if you have questions. You've seen in the news, there's a case of polio in New York. That was in an unvaccinated person. I could get really in the weeds here, but there are different types of polio virus. They've seen it in the wastewater, which is from an oral vaccine-derived polio virus. The risk of the type of exposure that we saw in New York is really very rare in the US. So there is a risk of outbreaks in unvaccinated communities or where vaccine coverage is low. So really, really, really the message here is making sure you're up to date on vaccines. If you have questions about that, talk to a healthcare provider, reach out to me if you have questions about clients or guests that you work with, and I can support you. And then lastly, I shared an email last week, but the Washington State Department of Commerce is distributing economic relief for homeless service workers with federal funding. It's called the Washington Homeless Worker Stipend Program. And so I will share that link with you all. Are there questions? Are there questions, concerns, anything for me this morning?
I see Jan has her hand up.
Okay. Hi, Jan.
Good morning. 15th and G on Wednesday had a Tacoma Pierce County Health Department van doing syphilis testing, and that syphilis testing was a direct response from those who live on 15th and G, being informed about syphilis because the health department has been so diligent in making folks be aware of the increase of the rates of syphilis. So I want to thank the health department for coming out with a van, even giving $5 incentive cards to get tested. So
Great.
Thank you, health department, and let's do more of those mobile in the street kinds of activities.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Jan, for mentioning that. I was going to mention syphilis as well, and I forgot. I will pass that feedback on to that team, and yeah, we're looking also at some partnering with our STD team is doing outreach with Tacoma Needle Exchange there. That as you know, they're there every Wednesday at that area, and possibly to do some monkeypox vaccine work as well. So I will thank you for the feedback. I'll pass it on, and I'll keep pushing for that work to continue.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. So we have once again blown our agenda out of the water, all with good conversation. So I am going to actually shift things around a little bit. We had planned to do a breakout conversation today. I think I'm going to move that topic to next week. So we'll do the review of the breakout from last week, as well as the additional breakout conversation next week. I really want to carve out time to be able to offer an update for everybody here about what the status is of the camping ban proposal in Tacoma, and be able to make sure we have the time for that conversation before we do our regular committee updates. So sorry if you were waiting for that breakout. My apologies, but I do think we've had some really good content this morning. So thank you for that. So what I'm going to do is just do a brief overview of what took place on Tuesday. Some of you may already be aware, some of you actually made public comment on Tuesday, but I want to set the context a little bit and then talk about the opportunities that we have to still influence the city council's decision around putting buffers around current temporary shelter sites in the city. The big takeaway is that the city council has postponed its final consideration of the ordinance until October 11th. So we will have opportunities both next week at the virtual forum that takes place on Tuesday at 6 p.m. There'll be an opportunity to make a comment on that policy proposal there. And then when it comes back up for final reading on October 11th, there will be another opportunity. I also understand that we have community partners in the community that are planning to have a large number of people show up at city council meeting next week. So I believe that's still moving forward, even though the final consideration of the ordinance will happen on October 11th. But that would be another opportunity to show up at city council chambers and then participate in the virtual forum next week. So here's where things are at with that proposal. So the city council made a couple of amendments to the proposal during Tuesday night's meeting. They heard public comment from 20 to 30 folks, including a number of folks who are in this meeting. One of the amendments to the proposal is to add Aspen Court to one of the city sites that will have a 10 block radius around it where there's no camping allowed. And then the other was to reduce the fine and the jail time associated with any misdemeanor charges that people would face if they refuse to move outside a buffer. When this would go into effect. At this time, the ordinance is still scheduled to go into effect if it is passed on Halloween, so on October 31. Real quickly, I'll offer an assessment. Clearly, there are 3 council members who are sponsors of the ordinance and are pretty solidly going to vote for it. There are 3 council members who have said they're solidly against the ordinance, but they have been trying to make amendments to improve the ordinance just in the off chance that it passes. And then there are other council members who are either on the fence or who have not explicitly said where they will land in the final vote at this time. So there's still an opportunity for us to influence this issue. They need 5 votes out of the 9 council members in order to pass the ordinance. They may have 5 votes, but it's because of the unannounced intentions of a couple of the council members, it's unclear where that's going to land. So I see a number of people are doing exactly what I was hoping folks would do, would be to have a vigorous conversation about potential talking points and planning in the chat. We do hope that you will contact your city council members and also the mayor and urge the city to reconsider this ordinance. Among the things that could be changed potentially, even if it passes, I've yet to hear a good rationale for why the buffer is being considered at 10 blocks. A number of other communities across the state that do have buffers around shelter sites do something like 2 or 3 blocks. The city of Vancouver, I realized earlier this week, has 1,000-foot buffer around shelter sites, sanctioned sites that are running. So there are ways to make the ordinance less harmful, that the footprint around the shelters doesn't essentially push a large group of people significant distance away from current shelter sites. One other thing that we should be aware of is that there was mentioned during study session last week or earlier this week that the mayor was working with the Puyallup tribe on an amended version that would also put a 200-foot buffer where there'd be no camping allowed around any shoreline on any protected waters in the city, which would mean, of course, anywhere along the waterfront and along streams and potentially lakes across the city. So that is another potential amendment that would come up on October 11th. So that's my long-winded overview. I know there's a couple of other of us who have been tracking the issue as well. Sally, anything I missed that would be good to include in a summary?
I think the city has 9 watersheds according to the stormwater folks, and if all of them and everything flowing down from Mount Rainier is considered protected, so if all of them and their tributaries are protected waters, that is a great deal of coverage. So it's important to track that item, and there was no written version of it at the study session, so I haven't seen a written version yet. But it makes me uncomfortable to think how much more extensive it would be. And to the person who put in the chat about we don't have the people power to enforce it, add all the protected waters and you truly don't. So we need to keep a close eye on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Sally. And yeah, it's unclear to me if it's just 200 feet from the actual stream itself, or if it's 200 feet from the actual watershed. Because the watershed is, of course, a much larger area than the stream. But yeah, there's much more to learn there, and I have not seen language on that potential amendment yet. So I've seen a lot of folks are including really good information in the chat. And I do urge folks to reach out. It's been noted in the chat that there is an effort specifically to reach out to Councilmember Walker. She is one of the 2 folks who really has not made clear what her intentions are on this legislation yet. So that's kind of where we sit. There's still a lot of opportunity, and it's very fortunate actually for us that we do have extra time to respond to this. One of the things I commented on Tuesday night was my frustration with how this proposal came about, that it did not come through the council's committee process, so there was no opportunity for stakeholders to really weigh in and offer alternatives, and even if it was clear that the legislation was going to move forward, to make the harm that will be caused by the ordinance less for those who are currently unhoused. So, Kathy, I see your question about council member Blocker, and he actually did say from the DS on Tuesday that he's opposed to the legislation. He's also been very blunt, saying that it will not work. I do urge, if you do know those council members who have said that they're opposed to the ordinance and you have the inclination, folks always do like to be thanked. And so it's always a good thing to thank people for supporting their stance as well. So that's the update on that. Any last comments or questions from anyone before we move on? All right, thanks for your patience. Oh, I see, Carolyn, you have a question.
Yeah, sorry. Where can I go to get a little context around this? I mean, I read it in the newspaper. I didn't know what the motivation was. I wouldn't know how to comment on it if I didn't know what the context is and what the pros are and what the cons are. Is there somewhere I can go, or someone give me a thumbnail sketch of that?
Let me drop so last week I shared a document about the about ways to reach out to the council regarding this. So I can put that in the chat. In terms of context and the and how the ordinance came about, really probably the best resource would be to listen to Councilmember Hines' testimony at the meeting from Tuesday night to hear his framing of it. But really it feels like there's a couple of motivations. One, a concern that some of the sanctioned shelter sites within the city have encampments directly outside the shelter site, and that's a troubling issue, and that communities that have shelter sites in them should not also then have to have encampments right outside the gates of that shelter site. So there's that piece, but then there seems to be some who are motivated to want to expand significantly beyond the footprint of the shelter site, and use this as a way that they believe legally they can do a larger camping ban in the city. So that's part of the context as well. Kathy.
Yes, that is a great question. And all of the information and all of the research that I've done is based on information available at the City of Tacoma's website. Specifically, if you go into the council meeting schedule, you will find the agenda there. The agenda will link you to the wording of this new ordinance. I believe it's ordinance 28831, if I have the number correctly. Yeah. And all of the information is right there on the city's website. So I believe in going to the direct source. There's been some robust conversations on social media on the People's Assembly website specifically about the meeting Tuesday morning that most of us were not able to participate in due to the early ungodly hour. But I digress. Yeah, city's website is a great place to find information, and also use the Coalition to End Homelessness, use their website. And also I'm going to put in one more plug because their legislative information is top notch. and that's the Washington Low Income Housing Association or Alliance. Those are my go-tos.
Thank you, Kathy. So we are running a little bit short on time. I do look forward to reading back on the chat. I can't pretend that I've been able to look at all of it, but I appreciate everyone's questions, comments, and if you did ask a question in the chat that didn't get addressed, I'll try to double back with you. So thank you, everyone. So let's move on to the remaining items on our agenda while we've still got a little bit of time. In terms of, I just briefly wanted to remind people the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness, the next meeting of the advisory board for that group, which is open to the public, takes place on the afternoon of October 7th. I'll share the link to that, including the agenda at next week's meeting. But do encourage, if you have the time and ability to listen to the process, the conversation, if I'm remembering correctly, that's going to happen at that meeting in October is around potential sources for filling the funding gap that has been identified, the $100 million plus funding gap that needs to be filled to create a shelter system that is more sized to the actual need in the county. So more about that next week. Let's move on to our committee updates. And we'll start with Safe Sites for All. Jan?
Thanks, Rob. We're going to move from policy to stuff. Got an email from Ivan from the Department of Emergency Management with Pierce County. There are some surplus stuff that the county has to release. No strings attached. Rob is going to post in the chat eventually panels, temporary cubicle panels. These panels measure 8 foot by 4 foot by about 1 inch thick. And then there's this real clever connecting system. The county is giving us 184 panels there's 7 pallets of these panels. They could be 8 across or 8 high, however you want to do it. We're thinking, you know, any of you shelter folks that need to make sort of a privacy cubicle for folks, go ahead and contact me. Nourish Food Banks has graciously allowed us to use their warehouse. So I really do not want to be looking at these panels for very long. Okay, so this is anybody and everybody. Contact me and we'll get you these panels for no questions asked. Just don't make it my headache. Okay, talk to you later. Thank you. Oh, by the way, Safe Sites for All, every Monday at noon. Please come. There's a lot to discuss. Winter is coming for one thing. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Jan. Other committee updates. Rosemary, is there anything we need to let folks know about this week?
I don't think we have anything specific this week, so next time.
Okay, great. So that means we have 12 minutes left in today's meeting. We don't have to take all 12, but I do want to carve out time for people to make good trouble announcements for the group. Anything that you think would be helpful to share with the 64 people here. And then we'll have space for success stories at the end of this. So Zoe, I see you have your hand up.
Hey again, everyone. Just wanted to announce that Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective is having our supply distribution event tomorrow from 11 to 4 at Wright Park near the statues. We'll have supplies like tents, tarps, warm clothing, lighters, all kinds of stuff, as well as we're getting some food catered, some generous donations. If you'd like to table or drop off some literature or whatever, please feel free to come through. If you just want to meet some people or hear more about the work that we do, it's a great kind of social environment that we usually end up getting going. So would love to meet you more. Would love to meet more of you. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ryan.
Hi. The Tacoma Red Cross on 25th and South Tacoma Way is shutting down. They've got a building at UP. They're just moving, but there's a ton of stuff that's still there that they can't move with them, particularly kitchen supplies, office, desks, chairs, things you might not really think of as first aid stuff. Boxes of 4,500 plastic forks. So if there's anything that you need in terms of housewares, what have you, they're available, and Dan will come down and meet you and make an appointment to work with your schedule or something like that. But it's just a kind of a good thing to browse and collect stuff if somebody or your organization's in need.
Thanks for that, Ryan. And anyone else with good trouble announcements? Ed, did you want to share, is there a way, what's the best way for folks if they were unable to attend or watch the memorial last weekend, how they could watch that now?
Oh, yes. Pierce County Homeless Memorial on Facebook. It's there for you, for your viewing pleasure, and it's good. We have an announcement that we'll be having another one December 21st. It's a Wednesday, but that's the National Day of Mourning for homeless people. So that'll be a big one, and that will include all of the names, all of the people that have died in the last year.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to help me cause trouble during the city council meeting on the 11th, call me, please. Lots of ideas.
Great, Ed, and hopefully you can have an opportunity to coordinate. I know there's other efforts to cause some good trouble starting next week, but then potentially on the 11th as well. So maybe we can get connected together. Patricia.
Curious question, Rob or Garrett, or can we put like the memorial stuff up on the coalition website? So when people look at homeless sort of responsibilities, they can see what we're trying to prevent as part of our work.
We could certainly link to it. I don't know that we would host it on the site, but yeah, we can definitely link to it.
I think that would be an important measure and to support the work we do, and as well as Ed, and just honoring everybody that did pass on the ground. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. That's a good idea. All right, so we also, I like to encourage folks to reflect on today's meeting, carve out just a little bit of space here. If somebody has comments about the content of today's meeting, what went well, what should we do differently next time, and what did we just not get right? Any of that information is all helpful. We want to make these meetings as useful, and even though the topic can be very difficult, we want it to be forward-looking and finding hope and providing hope in this community. So I urge you to provide any feedback. You can even do it just in a personal chat message to me if you would like. I know not everybody wants to provide that kind of feedback on camera, but let's pause for a moment, see if somebody wants to offer anything. Jan.
Yes, I think I feel the frustration of a lot of people that do street outreach work as far as running into folks who are being victimized by pimps and human traffickers. So when I found out in the community that there is an actual service, and then brought it to this coalition as a topic that perhaps all of us run into, Rob and the steering committee did a great job of making that information available to all of us. So it gets lonely out there in the street when you're walking around and passing out your little bottle of water and wondering what else you can do when somebody's being trafficked right next door. So I really want to thank the coalition for being open to this kind of a forum where we can share the good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And anyone with success stories that they would like to share? We've got a few minutes left in our potential time this morning. And it's fine. I know it's been a heavy week. But I do urge you, thinking ahead to next week's meeting and future Friday meetings, please do make a note in your mind. It's really easy to be overwhelmed and feel the frustration with what we're seeing on the streets every week. It's also really important to be able to call out those successes that happen, and so that's why we provide this time at the end of every meeting. And if you do come up with something, jot it down so that so you remember to mention it, and we'd love to hear that next week. Yeah, Jay, thank you for mentioning Oliver. So with that being said, we are at 10:55, and I think we can call the meeting. So thank you everyone for being here this week, and I do appreciate you. It's great to see everybody, and we'll see you all next week. If you have an interest in the ability, please stay on the line. We're going to meet in another 5 minutes in this same space to plan the upcoming meetings. But have a great weekend and a great week, people.